Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Spooky Japan Podcast. Hoping everyone is doing well today. How are you doing there, Irene? Cold?
Mm.
Chilly here in Japan.
Mm.
Brent, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on. This is great. I'm really excited to talk to you guys.
Well, thank you for joining us. You were requested, so I
Yeah.
reached out, and here you are.
I don't know who would have requested me, but I'm sure grateful they did. It's nice there's people out there that think that much of me. I'm always happy to go on other shows, and I do talk on many different shows. But I really enjoy each one because it's really I really do actually like talking about this stuff. I mean, obviously it's what I do for a living. I'm a podcaster and I do these shows for my living, but I really do love it. It's one of those things where I've found what I want to do with my life and I love doing it. And so it doesn't feel like work, but I just love even when I'm not doing it directly, I still find myself talking about it. Like maybe, I'm a kind of a one trick pony maybe, but
Mhm.
it's a great
But
trick.
it's your calling. That's what you
Yeah.
really.
Yeah. I think so. Yep.
Yeah, that's
You
great.
can't help but be a weird kid who like to talk about ghosts on the playground.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what's not to like? I've always gravitated towards this stuff just because I love the idea that there's still magic in the world. There's still mystery. There's still discovery. And
Hmm.
I think that all of this stuff is real profound reminders that we still have a lot to learn. Like, the arrogance and hubris of our sciences, would suggest, hey, we got it all sorted out. There's nothing to see here. We know exactly what's going on with all this stuff. No problem. And but then, things like a cereal bowl moves when nobody's touching it. It's like, well,
Yeah.
that's not supposed to happen. Wait, what does that mean, Mr. Science? Well, I don't know. I don't, and then you get the opposite. So obviously there's still some amazing things going on. And I'm not saying that it's like all of it is this creepy, esoteric, weird stuff. I just think that some of this stuff is really demonstrating the true nature of our reality. That there's,
Hmm.
we've really been conditioned to believe that reality is this concrete construct. It has absolute rules and it's unyielding, unbendable. But then this stuff happens, and you see a
Hmm.
ghost walk through your room,
Hmm.
or you're out in the woods and you see a 10-foot tall primate, or
Mm.
or a werewolf looking thing called the dog man, or any number of things. A UFO
Hmm.
flies by. It's like, wait, these rules seem a little more bendy than what I was told. Like,
Hmm.
and so I think that that's the nature of reality is, and this is what it's demonstrating to us. So I always like to think that everything happens for a reason. And I think
Yeah.
one of the reasons that this stuff continues to be demonstrated to us
Hmm.
is to remind us that we have a lot to learn, that
Hmm.
reality is maybe not this concrete box. It's a pliable, dynamic thing.
Yeah.
And we're a part of it and we're interwoven into it. And
Mhm.
it creates a world of wonder to me. So that's kind of my take on it.
That's true. But also, spirits also have rules too. So they can't always bug a person, a loved one. So unless they have permission to, also, so they have their own set of rules. And I think UFOs also, I think aliens also have their own set of rules too. So it's like everyone's binding in a way, and humans have their rules too. Whether they go by them or not, that's up to the human. But yeah, it seems like the other side seems to work with certain parameters they're allowed to work in, and it's kind of interesting because that's where I'm trying to get at, where their rules are, and how do they how do they how do they achieve those rules, and who makes those rules. I'm always asking questions about that and asking them questions about it, but somehow there's a guideline where they're not allowed to tell anybody. So I'm just trying to figure out the ins and outs of everything, and we'll get there sooner or later.
Yeah, I think so. It may be rules or it might be a series of necessary permissions because I think that all things have their own autonomy and the divine plan of things. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we have individual autonomy, and we should have, be able to represent that and choose what
Mm-hmm.
happens in our sphere. And most commonly, people respect
Mm-hmm.
each other's autonomy, and they come, if they come towards somebody, it's with their permission. And I think
Yeah.
a lot of that is the same for hauntings. Just for instance, hauntings,
Mm-hmm.
because hauntings, and here's the thing, I think that the ghosts don't come in and just start throwing furniture and stuff because
No.
they can't. And
No.
the reason
Yeah.
they can't is because they don't have permission, perhaps. And this is just a theory of mine,
Yeah.
and a rule, permission. Either way, it follows the same thinking.
Mm-hmm.
But when hauntings start, it's usually something simple like,
Mm-hmm.
"Where's my keys? Where I know I put my keys. I put my keys there every day. Now my
Mm-hmm.
keys are not there." You look around, and then you'll come back an hour later, and there's the keys right there where you always leave them, but suddenly they weren't there, and then they were. And it's like little subtle things like that it starts out with, and it makes you, kind of takes you off your equilibrium, and
Mm-hmm.
progresses. And then
Yeah.
eventually fear is introduced into the equation. Like all of a sudden,
Mm-hmm.
maybe a door will be closing right in front of you that never closes or never moves by itself. Like, it's true on the hinges. It shouldn't be moving either way. And
Mm-hmm.
yet you're watching it happen. Well, that introduces fear. And I think fear is a surrender. When people
Mm-hmm.
allow themselves to feel fear, you
Mm-hmm.
are surrendering. You're like, I don't know what this is. I don't have I don't know how it's doing this. I
Mm-hmm.
feel weak, small, and scared, and it empowers. And then,
Mm-hmm.
and so, but it's still fear. Surrender is still giving permission for something to exert more control. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense or not. And
It does. It
okay,
does.
okay.
Yeah. and and sometimes what you create too, so you have to be careful
Uh,
about. Yeah. And then like fighting, or kids getting on each other, or
mhm.
continuous arguing in your own home. It creates that too, so you have to be careful and what energy you bring to your own environment too. That also makes a difference too.
I actually couldn't agree more. I think that we often think that we're living in these meat suits,
Mm-hmm.
and everything we think, everything we feel, everything we experience is contained within this. Like, this is a shell, but it's not. We are energetic beings. We are an
Mm-hmm.
energy of our own, and we
Mm-hmm.
radiate all around
Mm-hmm.
us. You're right.
Mm-hmm.
If there's houses where there's a lot of negativity and a lot of things going bad, I mean, you can walk into those houses and just feel it like you're walking through paste. It's like, oh man. And so I think it is important for people to perhaps cleanse their environment. And this is where sage, I think, in traditional practices, sage isn't used to banish spirits, but it is used
Mm-hmm.
to balance energy. And
Mm-hmm.
it's good to go through with like sage or in sweetgrass and just kind of cleanse your home baseline. It's because you're right. Those things can build up, and that
Mm-hmm.
creates, like if it's a household, that creates what's called an egregore.
Mm-hmm.
You always hear the term tulpa. Have you guys heard that term of a
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
tulpa? It's like a thought form, and it's created by a person, but an egregore.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
tulpas can be created intentionally or unintentionally due to stress or whatever. Well, the same is true for egregores, except it involves a group of people. Now,
Mm-hmm.
tulpas usually just exist within somebody's head. They aren't real commonly seen outside of a person, except in like I think poltergeist cases and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But an egregore can very much manifest and become its own entity
Mm-hmm.
based upon it being fed by this continual emotional input, and it can create a consciousness, and that's what's referred to as an egregore. And
Mm-hmm.
I think it's fascinating. But I think, and I'm sorry if I'm pinballing all around here, but I just think this stuff is absolutely fascinating because
Mm-hmm.
I think that we do manifest our realities. I think that we
Mm-hmm.
are incredible creators of our own experience. And that sounds
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, if you look at it's going to be a happy day, then it is, and you've created that. Well, no, I mean
Yeah.
more. I mean much more fundamentally.
And
Like,
you have.
We
Yeah.
have the
Yeah.
ability to
Yeah.
create circumstances to, do some amazing things.
Yeah.
It's just that we've been conditioned to live
Mm-hmm.
with the blinders on and do our 9 to 5, and then
Mm-hmm.
we get to have weekends, but other than that, get busy and get to work, stay focused. you know
Yeah. Uh, I think we forget as humans, we forget that we are in control of ourselves, and
Mm,
that we have to remind ourselves what to do and what not to do, and create, if we create something bad, we have to learn how to undo it
yeah,
and make it better. And
yeah,
how do we make it better? Well, it takes a lot of practice. It takes your open mind to do it. But yeah, you just
What
can't
you were
do.
also talking about, Brent, is we have something here similar to that in Japan.
Hmm.
I believe it's called a Amario, Amario,
Mm.
where it is a ghost of a living person, and how that
Yeah.
comes about is mostly grudges or
mm,
or even jealousy, where it could be if you have like a strong grudge against someone,
Hmm.
they do believe that a detached spirit can come out of you and go after that person on your
sure,
behalf.
Yeah.
So they say
sure.
it's possible for you to basically, as they call it, see a ghost of a living person
Yeah.
Mm,
because it's going to look like you going after that person.
that's interesting. What was the name of that again?
I want to say Amirio, something similar to that.
I don't know. I've not heard of that before, but it does sound like it does sound like the whole doppelganger thing, maybe, which that is an experience a lot of people have where they see the exact copy of someone that's in their house, but they couldn't possibly be there.
Hmm.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That is pretty cool. But I was thinking of there's a third, of in the esoteric ideas, the tulpa, the egregore, and there's a third one that's usually created by
Okiru, Okiryu,
Okiri.
Okido.
Ikiryo.
Okay.
Huh.
I just
Rio.
heard I couldn't remember, and
Yo.
then with the
Yo.
Ryu.
Ryo,
Oh. Mm.
Okirio.
Yeah,
Mm.
Wow. That's interesting. That's really fascinating. Again, and it sounds like, yeah, I mean, there's plenty of precedents for that. And it does have to do with the energy of a person, but the servitor is created usually by an individual, like a magical practitioner, like a true magical
Mm.
practitioner, and
Mm.
they are basically like conscious spells, and they
Mm.
can do many things. Like if you want
Mhm.
somebody, and it sounds kind of like what you're talking about, the Okyurio sounds kind of like a servitor. It's like
Mm.
jealousy and spite and hatred, and you focus it on somebody, well, it becomes a conscious spell, and it can haunt
Mhm.
a person, it can torment them just
Mhm.
based upon what you're feeling towards them. And that's really kind of scary stuff when you think about it.
But you kind of like think, like, you gotta think, we are humans. We have the capability of doing all kinds of crazy stuff, right?
Mm,
Shitty stuff too. Sorry about the language, but yeah.
it's
I
okay.
mean, we have the capability of masterminding whatever we can, and through our minds and our souls, we can do it. And it's all about intentions, right? And you have the intent to do it, you can do it. And
Hmm.
then how much intention you put into it, it does work.
Sure. Yeah.
And yeah, and it's just how you say it, and how you feel it inside, and how much you put into it internally is when you bring it out, and
Yeah.
you create that emotion, and you create that in negative energy, or you can create the positive energy. And it you know it's up to
That's
you.
That's a good
Yeah.
point. It could be inverse. Yeah, it's not always the dark and horrible. It could be
Mm.
something beautiful, like almost like a guardian spirit towards somebody if you love somebody enough and
Yeah.
you couldn't be there. Is it possible to project a positive energy to watch over
Yeah.
them? Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's the mind is something incredible, right? Because we're given this beautiful mind, but we can do whatever we want with it, but we have to watch what we put into it, and how much we put into it, because y- yeah, our minds can get us into a lot of trouble, let's put it that way.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
When I first heard of the ghost of the living person, all I could think of this makes perfect sense, and I can't believe I never thought of that
Mm,
way before.
Yeah.
mm,
Especially because emotions have such power that we don't even. It's basically the same thing as a poltergeist in your house, but
Mhm.
this goes after whoever you're pretty much
mm,
You
not
know,
liking at that time.
and that's a phenomena that's I had only heard of. Maybe I heard about 3 years ago, and it had never occurred to me either. But when I covered a story on my show, it was on one of my live streams on YouTube, and essentially the story goes that it was a young couple got married, and the guy was an active duty military, but
mhm,
his wife and he had been married, and they decided, you know what, they were going to start a family. She was pregnant, and so they finally made their dream happen, and they went and got this beautiful house in this neighborhood
mhm,
that was going to be their home for their family and their emerging family and all of this. And so it was this beautiful moment, and they were all coming together, and they got into the house and just got settled. Well, then he got activated and had to go to full duty,
mhm,
and had to go overseas to I don't know, the Middle East, I guess, is where he was stationed. But she had to be home now as this expecting mother and
mhm,
trying to put this house together and build this life for them. And so the strain, of course, with this big property and being brand new, and just, as she was getting very pregnant, it was getting very hard for her to
mhm,
keep up. And so she's just like, man, I can't wait till he gets home. This is, I can't, we need to be together. We're just starting our life. And then
mhm,
there was a knock at the door, and it was the military representatives
Oh,
informing her that he had passed in the in combat. And so she was crushed, and by this time she was very pregnant, and she was just racked by grief and uncertainty and not sure what to do.
mhm,
Well, she said her ritual was to go stand by the sink and get
mhm,
her belly to rest on the countertop by the sink, and then she would just let go and just let the tears flow and let all of this pain and sadness and grief pour out of her.
mhm,
And it was just, what else are you going to do? But she always did it in that position, standing at the kitchen sink with her belly on the counter to take the weight off of her back, and then she just let it go. And
mhm,
she did this over and over and over. Well, eventually she had the baby, but decided this big house was just going to be too much for her as a single parent, and with this brand new child. So she decided to sell the house.
mhm,
And so she did sell the house, and during the time of living there, she'd become close with some of the neighbors and stuff, or at least this one neighbor couple. And so she moved away and ended up, starting her life in either a smaller house or an apartment. I don't remember which, but she did stay in contact with those old neighbors. And so she decided, after a couple of years, she decided, well, I'm just going to go over and visit the old neighbors and say hello and catch up. And so she did, and she went there, and they were talking, had a nice visit, and then she said, well, how's it going for the new owners of the house? And they said, well, the neighbor said, well, they love the property, but they're just having real problems. She goes, what's going on? They said, well, apparently they keep seeing this apparition of a woman in their kitchen bawling against the kitchen sink.
mhm,
Now, all of that emotional imprint from this woman had
mhm.
created what I guess would be a residual haunting, but
Yeah,
she was still very much alive. It wasn't
yeah,
some relic of a past age. She was very much alive, but her grief remained there and formed this apparition that would appear and bawl at the sink.
mhm,
So I was like, wow, that's
mhm,
amazing. Because usually when you think of like residual hauntings, and again, for anybody that's not clear, residual is just like more like recordings that replay. They're not
mhm,
intelligent. They're not really interacting with people around or any objects
Mhm.
around. They just maybe, walking a path or sitting in a rocking chair, staring blankly, never
Yeah.
acknowledging people seeing them. That's a residual, whereas the intelligent would be like, oh, you're walked in the room and maybe shut the door on you or something. So it's actively involved in the day to day, or at least towards the people there. But this
Mhm.
was a residual haunting that she created. And so
Mhm.
it is a form of manifestation, and
Mhm.
it's a powerful reminder that our emotions can be imprinted and can create phenomena themselves.
Unintentionally.
Yeah.
Yeah. It
Yep.
reminds me of a story about someone who said that there was a there was this house everyone thought was haunted
Mhm.
because you'd always see a woman at the same time jumping off the balcony.
Oh,
But there said it's residual because every day at that time the woman walks the same path in the house, and then you can see her kind of like jump to her death, and that's what like
oh,
and that's what I think it is because like you don't get any evidence anytime else other than seeing the apparition walking on the halls, walking into the room, walking to the balcony,
wow.
walking up and jumping. So
Oh, that's a heartbreaker that somebody gets
that
to.
that is yeah.
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 So
That,
unfortunately, with that being residual, they don't get any answers why
yeah. Yeah.
that.
That happens a lot in this country.
That's true. What was
On
that?
this side of especially on my side, more on my side than on her side. I get the more, yeah. I
Yeah. Okay.
get the more than she does.
Well, it's because Japan is mostly a Buddhist country,
Yeah.
and the Buddhists believe is if you're not happy in this life, you can to keep it social media friendly. You can unalive yourself and start again in the
That
next
doesn't
life.
sound right. Oh,
Oh,
I know it sounds weird to say that, but unfortunately, social media, if you don't say it that way, flags because they're
yeah.
like, "Oh, you
Yeah.
said that word. We have
That
to take
word.
down your video because
Yeah.
we're not going to see the what the conversation was about or why you used it. You must be promoting it." I'm like, we're not.
Yeah.
But
Clearly.
we're paranormal. We can't avoid the word death. Okay, you
Yeah.
can't.
And different ways that people came to meet their death. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
yeah,
what I'm saying. And sometimes you talk about the paranormal. You do have to talk about death.
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah. Brett made a point in the chat. Every energy never dies. It just manifests into something
mm,
else.
Yeah.
yeah,
That's a great point. Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
it's fundamental of physics. Energy is neither created nor destroyed. It just changes
yeah,
form. So,
yeah,
and so certainly so does the conscious portion of ourselves. But I
yeah,
think that also the emotional energy can follow those same guidelines, right? That
yeah.
it can be shed from us and
Mm-hmm.
then change form. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
It's true.
I think it is. I really think it is. Yeah.
hmm my my daughter used to go to high school, and at one train station, there's a lot of accidents, and
Oh,
I know it's residual, and it's like and the other day there was a accident, not an accident, well, kind of like an accident, but yeah, two people got arrested. No, three people got arrested, but that one train station has a really bad energy where a lot of people would jump in front of the trains and
oh
they
dear.
try to unalive themselves all the time. And my daughter said, I can't come home. Is it okay if I stay at my friend's house? I go, yeah, okay. They both went to the same school. They both graduated,
Hmm.
but she still lives there. And she goes, can I stay at her place? I go, sure, go ahead. She goes, all I wanted to do was come home, have a hot meal, and go to bed. I guess I can't even do that. Like it becomes a thing that happens, and it's reoccurrence all the time on that one train station. It's just the next train station over to where we live, and it's not a big one. It's just a small one where trains go this way and trains go come and go the opposite direction, and it becomes really annoying. And one time my daughter said, I'm on train, I can't come home, it'll be at midnight. I said, I said, "Well, you can take a cab home, and I'll pay for it when it gets here. Just give me a ring when you just give me a call when the cab gets to our door." And unfortunately, her teacher was coming home at the same time. He said, "Well, my wife is going to be picking us up at the train station, so I'll have them swing by your house." And I said, "Oh, thank you very much." But yeah, it's like my daughter's saying, "Really? You kidding, right?" From something sad to say, "Oh my God, not again." Like it's like, I'm being convenienced out of my time, right? And it's 11 o'clock at night, so by 11:30 you have to be home, or else the truant officer will be
Oh,
running around looking for kids who are out before midnight, right? So
wow.
my daughter tries to get home before 11:30, and it's like, classes end about 10:30, and then they're on the train by 11 o'clock, and 11, they're at home by 11:30, and it's like, what an inconvenience, but it's a sad reminder of this country has so much hauntings and so much weird things going on and
Mm.
phenomenons that going on. And it's an old country, okay, so you get you get a mixture of this and that. It's like your ham sandwich. What would you want to put on your ham sandwich, right? You got a little bit of this, you got a little bit of that,
Yeah,
and then yeah, it's just, some of it's crazy, some of it's sad, some of it's like, what a pain in the butt. Like, why did they choose this time, right? But
right.
yeah, that's looking at the other side, but looking at this side, you wonder, no, why the train stations are haunted. Now you know why, blah blah blah. And, like, and the trains are haunted too, and sometimes they say, well, you never go to the train station after 3 o'clock in the morning, and some of them don't open up till 4 a.m. anyways in the morning. So yeah, they close at midnight, and they open up at 4 a.m. in the morning, because some the early trains come arrive at 5 o'clock, and that's when they start in Tokyo. But it's just a subtle reminder that this is a country that's really old, really freaky, and really creepy things happen. And some of it you might not want to engage, some of it you still the hell away from it, right?
Yeah, yeah, of
And
course.
yeah, yeah, and the ones that just go, okay, I'm gonna go this way, you go that way, and we'll be cool, it's
Yeah,
that's the way it is in this country. It's so, but you get to know which ones you stay away from really quick, and you get to know which ones you can adhere to. It's just like, okay.
oh,
Yeah, it can be scary too,
right.
or it can be really downright freaky. The freaky side's mostly on Amanda's side. My side's more like, okay, bye bye.
We have a lot of shadow figures down
Yeah,
here.
yeah,
And a lot
Um,
of people ask me, how come you don't? Because they'll stop and stare. They're not like in America where you kind of see them like in a flash, or you just happen to catch in a photo. They'll stop and
yeah,
stare at you. A lot of people
really?
ask me if they're staring at you, being a paranormal investigator, how come you don't take a picture of it or try to talk with it? Because they told me not to. And it's
Really?
the only reason why I'm showing you me is because this little area is my area. You can walk across this the other side of the street and just leave me alone.
yeah,
I'm like, okay, I'm
Oh,
not gonna upset you. I'm not gonna
yeah,
find out what happens if I upset you. Because there has been times where like my dog will start barking and I'll go see what she's barking at, and I walk out to the other room and there is a shadow figure in there, and they're just like they're in and out. It's just like, I'm just letting you know I can come into your house at any time. You want to cross my
jeez.
boundaries? I'm like, I wasn't going to begin with.
yeah.
I know
Oh,
better than to upset a spirit. Okay?
Nope.
sure, sure.
And yeah, they tell you your boundaries really quickly, and you better learn really fast, because you
Huh.
don't want anything nasty happening to you, and they can do something nasty to you too. And it's just, yeah, how to read it and not to go there, not to push it, right?
Mm,
You
interesting.
just don't. And they said, well, why don't you, let's see what happens. you think you're an idiot, right? If you're gonna ask that question, right? You just don't do it, and then yeah,
Sure.
it's. But some people, they say, "Well, let's see what happens." I said, "Don't you dare!" Like be
Yeah.
quiet,
Yeah.
heal.
There is, yeah, there's something to, I think especially in any kind of investigating, you gotta be respectful because
Yeah.
you don't really know. You don't know what you're dealing with. It could
Yeah.
be a former
Yeah.
human, or it could have been never human.
Yeah.
It could have been some transdimensional thing rather than an
Hmm.
actual ghost or spirit, or it could be something extraterrestrial, or any number of things. Maybe things that exist on the same plane of reality as we do, but they're just out of phase with us, like a different frequency, or they exist in a different light spectrum than we do, or whatever.
Yeah.
So we experience them like these ghostly beings, but maybe they're not.
Hmm.
But I think always approaching any of it with extreme respect, and and peace, because it makes me cringe when you watch those ghost shows where it's like, well, come on, take my energy, come on,
Yeah.
oh,
Oh
and then
God.
I
they like
mean,
they go to a haunted place where somebody unalived themselves by hanging, and they bring a noose, and it's like, oh no, what are you doing? It's like, that's not the way that you approach this stuff
No.
respectfully.
No.
So there's just so much to this, but I think if you come in with kindness, with peace, with reverence and respect,
Uh-huh.
it goes a long way. But it would be interesting to see a shadow person just stop and look at you. I would, honestly, I'd be
I
really.
thought I was losing my mind the first time it happened. I literally did. The only
Yeah.
reason why I knew I wasn't because I was walking my dog, and my dog was how my dog was reacting as she did at the time when she saw a new person when she has to go investigate a new
Oh, yeah.
person. So I'm like,
And she
okay,
messaged me right away afterwards. She goes, "What do I
I
do?"
know
You
it
don't do
sees it,
nothing.
so it's there. I literally thought I was losing my mind. I'm looking around. I'm like, is this reality? What is going
Yeah.
on?
And I said, just ignore it. Just go home and just be cool and just cool your head down and just take a breath and just relax. Cause yeah, what you saw was real, and don't bug it. She goes,
Yeah.
okay. She goes, okay. I go, yeah. you know,
Sure.
it happens a lot. It
Does it?
happens a
Okay.
lot where she is. Her area is mostly sad. Um, they
Mm.
died for before their time, and for whatever reason, you got the atomic bomb. You got people dying because they had radiation poisoning. You got everything else mixed up in Nagasaki. So, and you have the people who were crucified in Nagasaki too. So they it's a mixture of everything down there, and
Oh.
it's really dark, and it's really, yeah. And so you get the painfulness there, and
Yeah.
you feel the pain in there as soon as you walk around in that area. And it comes back from the long time ago in the samurai era to World War II, and it's just, yeah, it's a mixture of, like, it's the air is thick. You could cut it with a knife.
Wow.
Yeah, and a lot of a lot of crazy stuff happened a long time ago back then. So you you just have to learn to live with it, right?
Yeah, yeah, but it is interesting. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of sadness there for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
through if you consider, and I'm no expert on Japan by any means, but there was quite a feudal system that was pretty brutal for a lot of number of
Yeah.
centuries and
Yeah.
generations, and
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
battles between different factions and
Hmm.
such. And I think that was maybe everywhere experienced some of that,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, what a of course, the World War II and all of the pain and suffering that was brought
Yeah.
about by that, and
Yeah.
yeah, that's kind of a hot spot. Do you feel it, Amanda, as you're in that town, or do you just become used to it?
I I mean, you can still feel it, but I'm more used to it now.
Sure. When you first got there, did you really notice it? Like, whoa, what?
Yeah, it does feel different, especially here. They're older than
Hmm.
obviously United States,
Hmm.
so it's interesting here.
Yeah.
The air is different. The air is different. And in one place, it could be lighter, and the other place it'd be thick as butter. And so
Sure.
it depends on where you go in one area to the next. You really you could feel it in your fingers, and
Right.
just by going there and just by even smelling it, it smells different.
As someone told me, it's a vibration. It's a
Yeah.
Yeah.
different vibration.
Okay.
That's the
Wow.
best way to explain it. Yeah, it's like it's definitely a different vibration.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's really fascinating, and yeah, it doesn't surprise me. Oh, good. Was Grandizer was Grandizer the one that recommended it?
Yes, they said your name 3 times, so I'm like, you know what? Let's make it like Beetlejuice and make him appear.
That's
Yeah.
right. Thank you, Grandizer. I appreciate your promoting me everywhere you go. God bless you, brother. Thank you. He's a listener of mine as well on my live show. So, and I see him on
Like the
several
worst
of the
thing, I'll
shows.
reach out to him. Worst thing he can do is tell me no.
No, I love doing other shows, and like I said, it's just really cool to, and also it's just I've only been to Japan once on a layover,
Mhm.
uh, and it was an unexpected layover. I actually didn't realize that the airport shut down in
At night.
Narita shut down at night, and I was like, oh God, and I had a 16-hour layover, so I had to go
Dang.
figure out somewhere to go. And speaking no Japanese,
Hmm.
that was an adventure, but I found a
Hmm.
place. And
Mm.
I ended up walking around some of the neighborhoods that were in that area by the hostel, I guess, that I stayed at, and I just walked around, and it was just really neat. It was like 3 in the morning, and everybody was asleep. I suppose I look kind of creepy now that I think about it, but that was my one experience with Japan. But I've always been fascinated with Japanese culture, and well, especially the paranormal stuff. And I find it really interesting that the paranormal activity does mold itself to the regions. In other
Mm.
words, for instance, the Samara like character from The Ring. Well, that's a very classic Japanese
Mm.
ghost, visage. But
Hmm.
we don't, over here in the West, we never hear about stuff like that. That, oh, I saw this, woman with white night clothes and this long drapey hair. I couldn't see her face. I mean, that almost never comes up, but it seems real common, at least as a theme in Japan. And I'm not really well versed on this, so you can tell me no, that's more folklorish or whatever. But
Mm.
do you guys hear claims of apparitions like that?
There's a lot of
Yep.
ghosts there's a lot of ghosts here that actually were because they're thrown into a well. So there's many
Mm.
stories like that, which is
Oh,
so it's that's I can see how that came to be, especially because from my understanding, the ring actually her that's a modern version of one of the more famous ghost stories here in Japan, where
right.
it wasn't whatever she was in the movie The Ring. I can't remember, but it was the real ghost was the dish maiden who was thrown into a well and died in a
Yep.
well.
The reason why is that long time ago, people never got divorced. If you were married, you're married for life, right? Instead of getting divorced,
You
throw
just
her
got
down the well so
you
you
just
can get
got single
remarried.
other ways. Oh no,
Yeah.
that's horrifying.
Or strangle her, like where Amanda is just a spirit that comes out, and she screams, right, Amanda? And
I've heard
she was probably strangled and thrown in the ocean. So she
Oh,
comes out and she screams. And yeah, so getting divorced was not a thing. It was like a no-no. And so instead you get rid of your other partner, your other self, and
wow.
get remarried.
That's
Yeah.
pretty dark. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
so The ring is not based off of someone who was married. It was a dish maiden named Okiku.
Mhm.
They kind of made it modern to the ring, and the story with her is she was a dish servant in Hikano Castle, which is one of the 12 original castles here
Mhm.
here in Japan, and it served obviously the Lord, but they had samurais living in there. One of the samurais became was fell in love with her, but she did not reciprocate.
Mhm.
He would always, tell her, ask her to be my lover, and she would always decline. He got to the point where he was just getting very impatient with her turning him down because who wouldn't want to be with this great samurai?
Mhm.
So he came up with an idea where, because she was a dish maiden, if anything happened to some of the dishes, guess who would be immediately blamed by the Lord?
Yeah.
Yukiku. So he had 10 decorative plates. They never say how. I'm going to assume for this story they're expensive. They never actually say. But he had 10 special plates. And the samurai took one and hid it.
Mhm.
And he just kind of mentioned in passing to the lord of the manor or lord of the castle, he was just like, "Yeah, I know. It looks like one of your. I just happened to be passing. It looks like one of your plates is gone."
Mhm.
So the lord saw that he had 9 plates out of 10.
Mhm.
So he went and yelled at the dish maiden, saying, "You must have lost one." And of course, she kept frantically counting, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, hoping to always find 10. She kept counting over and over again, trying to recount them, thinking, it has to be here. I didn't touch it. I didn't move it. Kept searching for it, but she never found the 10th one. So
Oh,
then the samurai was just like, "Hey, I'll make you a deal. I can convince the Lord it wasn't your fault if you become my lover." She still turned him down. He got mad, so he tied her up. He, I'm gonna hurt her because social media. He hurt her,
mm-hmm.
threw her down, dunked her in the well, brought her up, kept yelling at her, "Are you gonna be my lover now?" She was still saying no. He kept doing the same thing, hurt her, dunk her, brought her up, kept asking her, she kept declining, back and forth until she finally died in that well.
Mhm.
Oh
And then
no.
they said later on, all of a sudden, Okiku's spirit would rise from the well and walk around the castle, counting to 9, pause, really loud, blood shattering scream. And they
Mhm.
said if you heard her count to any part of the count to 9, you became violently ill. If
Mhm.
you heard the scream, you somehow mysteriously died.
Oh
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
Wow.
So they turned it into the more modern version of you watch this video,
Mm,
Mhm.
counting to
Yeah.
7 days. That's when she comes to get you.
Yeah.
yikes. Well, that's
Yeah.
horrifying.
Yeah.
Uh, it happens. A lot of vengeful spirits are mostly women here, and they will try to. Yeah. Well, if you're a male, good luck.
Mm, yeah.
um.
Wow.
Um. Some places are like that, where a lot of women spirits roam the forest, try to find their next victims, and it's an urban legend, but you know how many times urban legends were based on true facts in Japan? A lot of them are. They're crazy, but it's real.
Yeah, it's crazy how much and the interesting thing is that the actual legendary story was much creepier than the Hollywood
Mm,
version, you know?
yeah.
Well, that's usually what happens with
Yeah.
a lot of the horror movies here are based off of an urban legend.
Yeah.
Oh,
Or
that
okay.
they turned into because they love stories here, especially good
yeah.
scary story here. They turned it into, obviously it went to a movie,
Mm,
and then Hollywood adapts it to. I've seen other
mhm,
scary movies in America that happen to
mhm,
be their Hollywood remake of one here in Japan. And seeing the scary movies here in Japan, even though you have to read like subtitles in English, it's still
mhm,
creepy. Even though, and they're obviously not as high budgeted as the Hollywood ones, I still think the ones here are
Mhm.
creepier than what Hollywood did,
Sure.
just
There's
because
no
it's such an
crazy
art
guy
form.
coming around with a knife trying to kill anybody. It's like a spirit coming after a person.
Yeah.
Well, they do such a good job at telling a
Yeah.
story in a movie
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
Hollywood just turns it around and makes it into
Mm,
whatever they make it in. I'm like, man, the low budgeted Japanese version is just creepier.
yeah. It's
Well,
way more scary. Like, yeah.
yeah. Well,
One
even
time
look
my
at
daughter was watching one. She said, "Can you come with me? I gotta go to the bathroom." I said, "Well, it's over there, right there." She goes, "Yeah, I'm not gonna go by myself." that's how. That's how bad. That's how scary it is. Like, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
it can be. There's a lot of really scary Japanese movies,
Sure.
and the most of them happen in the bathroom. Most of them are about like yeah,
The
like
bathrooms that
Sadako versus Hanako and Sadako alone, and yeah, you get all these yeah,
Oh,
it
geez.
yeah, and it's just yeah, creepy, scary.
Yeah. Well, you look at even at the movies in the US, like there's huge multi-million dollar budget movies that do okay, but then something like what was it? The Blair Witch, which
hmm
was basically $100,000 budget or whatever, and it was a bunch of
hmm
people, going out with camcorders and creating this found footage thing. And
hmm
at first when it came out, people weren't sure if it was real or not. That was
hmm
the studios kind of spun it in such ways like, well, we're not really sure, but this might be real. And of course,
hmm
everybody flocked out and
They
saw it was
hired no
real.
name actresses for that.
What's that?
Yeah.
That's why I hired no name actresses for that. Don't let them
Mhm.
really do public stuff until
Yeah,
sometime after the movie was released. So this way, people are just like, "Well, I can't find his picture." He
yeah.
actually.
They're not on IMDb. They must be real people.
Well, the
Yeah.
part with the Blair Witch they're saying though is they didn't tell the actors what was coming next. They just
Mm.
Oh,
knew you're going to go camping in the woods, and we're just going to leave it at that. So anytime they made noises outside of their tents,
mhm.
Mhm.
they weren't expecting it. So that's why it's more authentic.
So the
Mhm.
Was they
fear
weren't
is
expecting it. They weren't expecting to also come out and see the things in the tree hanging either.
oh, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's
Wow.
also what gave it that factor, which was a good idea looking at it. That's also why people didn't know it was real or not, because
Mm.
they didn't have to really act. They didn't know, they themselves didn't know what was coming.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that's
Compared
creepy.
to
Yeah.
Paranormal Activity, which that first started out with like what I want to say either 5 or 15,000 was the budget,
Oh,
Mm.
yeah.
but obviously that's all scripted. So
Right, right. But still, it's very creatively done and it was very suspenseful. It didn't
Mhm.
require a so it's all about the eye of the artist that's, directing it, I think, and I'm sure the Japanese directors are incredibly talented and maybe work a lot harder than their American counterparts because, over here everything's ego. But,
Mhm.
you know, I think that's very cool. I know I like the anime. I like anime stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Kids are most likely they learn about paranormal really early, and
Mm.
as a young child, you watch. There's a lot of children's programs about paranormal, and they're subjected to it at a very young age because it
Ah,
exists here. Okay,
sure.
the cryptids are very part of everyday life, and the thing is that they want you to know that it exists, but you don't encounter with it. It's a no-no, kind of like in this country. So I'm kind of like used to it. And they said, well, why can't you? And they said, well,
Mhm.
because you don't want to you don't want to be involved with it, or you don't want it getting involved with you, or you don't want it getting entangled with you. And I said, well, that's not a
Oh,
very good answer, right? But anyways, it's just a way of life, learning about paranormal and knowing that exists in Japan. So you're subject to it at a very young age, and a
mm.
lot of manga and a lot of anime shows are on the TV that do show paranormal, and a lot of comic, we call them comic books. We can call them comic books. Anyways, a lot of books show a lot about paranormal, and
Mm.
it's a part of your life in this country.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's cool. And yeah, I mean, I find it really fascinating because I'd like to hear about like Japanese cryptids. Like,
Oh, we have
what
thousands of them.
Oh
really?
yeah.
We already we've already said this before, where her and I thought about doing an
Yeah.
episodes just of Japanese
Sure.
cryptids, but we also know basically it might be like a list of 100 different ones per episode because we don't have any cryptid researchers here at all,
Mm-mm.
so there's nothing much known about a lot of the cryptids. Where it's majority of them are just basically like, hey, we call it this. You find it here, and it looks like this.
Wow.
That's it. Moving on to the next one.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So it'd be basically that.
Uh,
And if you want to find out the history of a place, good luck. You'll never find it. Either
r-
they knew about it or they scrapped it.
really?
Yeah.
Oh, they'll just
Because
There's
bury it, huh?
no vital record
no,
here.
because it's everything is prime property, right? Because land
Yeah.
is so precious here.
Sure.
Uh, and if it's being sold and somebody buys it and somebody tries to find out the history of that, you'll never find out.
Really? Okay.
You and it's like almost you have to have you have to have a clairvoyant when you when you buy property, or when you rent out an apartment, because you'll never know what's gonna happen. If the rent is pretty cheap, right, or the
Uh,
rent could be really expensive. It's prime property.
So we don't have
And
any. As
yeah,
I
and
remind Irene, though, we don't
yeah,
have anyone publicly admitting their clairvoyance
no,
here.
oh,
no,
So
really?
no,
yeah, so like good luck trying to find one though. So you're pretty
yeah,
much on your own.
yeah.
To answer this, Brett, our the closest thing we do have a Bigfoot here, but he's 5 foot tall.
Hmm.
They
Oh,
call it
okay.
the Hibagon.
Hmm.
Uh-huh. What did you
It's
call
called
it?
the Hibagon, and that's our version of Bigfoot, but he's only 5 foot tall.
Hibagon.
Hmm.
He's only been seen as 5 foot tall. And I say this because people are like, is that we've had Bigfoot researchers on the show, and they're like, well, that sounds like an adolescent. I'm like, I don't know. We don't have any Bigfoot researchers over here. So we always
Hmm.
encourage them.
Hmm.
Come to Japan, research them. I
Yeah.
promise you, any information you find is going to be new and groundbreaking. You
Yeah.
Right.
don't have any competition here, so
No, it'll be yours. It'll be
it,
yours.
it's all yours. I promise. Even one
Yeah,
little information
yeah.
You know,
is going to
that's
be
kinda
yours
interesting.
more
It's
than
interesting
anything. And I was like,
because I'm sorry, go ahead.
and because you found, you got the idea for Spooky Japan podcast, it's only fair you come back to Spooky Japan podcast and share what you've learned.
Absolutely. Well, I was thinking it's interesting because that certainly Japan isn't alone with this diminutive cryptid kind of thing.
Hmm.
There's versions of Bigfoots, and I don't know that they're Bigfoot, but like if you look at Indonesia, which is also in the Pacific Islands, there's the orang pendek, which is
Hmm.
maybe some offshoot of orangutan, just a new type, but it might be a cryptid all on its own, more like a Bigfoot. But they're about 3 feet tall, 3 to 4 feet tall, which is in the Hibagan range, really,
Hmm.
as far as
Yeah.
the size. But
Hmm.
in Vietnam, they have the rock apes.
Hmm.
I don't know what the traditional name in Vietnam is, but they're certainly not as big and robust as both the year, maybe the year, and I don't know about the size of the year, and I think they get pretty big, but like the Yowie in Australia and the North
Mm-hmm.
American Bigfoot and the Almas and Almasties, those are all big, but in the Pacific Islands there, they tend to be much smaller. So I wonder if that's maybe some close relative of each other
Mm-hmm.
that's primarily in the Pacific Islands there, like maybe the orang pendant, hibagon, and I think it's bunyips in Australia. Aren't
Mm-hmm.
they the small hairy beings? Like they got the big yowies, but
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the bunyips. I might be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Um, all these cryptid names bouncing through my head. I kind of misplace them. It's kind of my dyslexia as names, but um, it does seem interesting to me that there are so many regions pretty close together geographically
Mm-hmm.
that all report having these, 3, 4, 5 foot primate like creatures. So I find that fascinating.
There, the scientists are also saying that after the atomic bomb in Hiroshima, where they existed in the mountains of Hiroshima, they're saying that after the atomic bomb, they don't know what it did to the DNA. So it
Oh.
might have changed it. It might have done something to it. But that's as far as your research is going to go, because that's as far as you're going to find anything.
And that's
Eh,
kind of interesting that they would have any kind of theory,
Yeah.
because I mean, who knows? Unless you got one of these, that's the big thing is the people that talk as if, and this is kind of a personal thing for me, but and no offense to either of you for just repeating what you've heard, that's perfectly fine. But I always wonder, it's like, well, who are they? How could they possibly know unless you've actively studied the genome of these things and seen some
Yeah.
portion of the genome that was aberrated or altered by
Mm-hmm.
exposure to radioactivity, and which would
Mm-hmm.
require a pretty robust specimen to draw all that kind of knowledge. And so,
Mm-hmm.
those are
Yeah.
fantastic,
It's
wild
just
theories.
it's just quote unquote the theory, and
Sure, sure. Yeah.
and we have no idea of finding where they got their theory and how
Yeah.
they came to the answer and
Right.
questioning of that. So yeah, I mean, good luck in finding it too, because you, yeah,
Right.
it,
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of people in these fields that talk as if, well, this is what this is and this is what that is. Like, how do you know really? Because
yeah,
with any of this stuff, if you're not able to actively research, and by actively research meaning like where a population is and you observe them regularly,
mhm,
and you can get access to their genetic materials, behaviorally watch them, and
yeah,
profile what they do when they do it and all this stuff. I mean, there's so
yeah,
many people that walk around spouting knowledge like it's something they own, and I just don't buy it. And
yeah,
I do find that for myself. Like I keep an open mind for
mhm,
pretty much all of this stuff, but at the same time, I do have a strong logical streak in me that's like, yeah, but how can you know that? I
mhm,
just really want to know, and it's not because I don't believe anybody could know, but I want to know how they know if that's what they say is real. And it's not like,
Yeah.
and
well,
there's
that's we obviously know that. It's like, no, we don't obviously know anything about these things really, other than they leave footprints, they eat, and they are physical at least to some measure because they break stuff and they throw stuff and interact
yeah,
with the environment around them. But other than
yeah.
that, we really don't know anything.
There's another theory that's going up that I just saw it, but one scientist claimed that how did Japan create this movie about Godzilla? Did it really exist?
Oh
Is it
dear.
still living? Yeah. Is it still in the mountains? Is it still in the volcanoes? Right?
Wow.
But
Okay.
how did Japan create this gigantic beast with big teeth?
The kaiju.
And and you know, even I got one. Even I got my little
I
Godzilla.
I love Godzilla. I've always been a fan since I was
I
a
see him
little
cute
boy.
too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
And
awesome.
He
this is
exists
the
here.
1954 Godzilla.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah.
And it sits on my it sits on my my bead My
Oh,
crystal
that's cool.
beads, one of the ones that I make, it's just on my in there on top of the box, and that's I treasure it because I love it so much. But they're saying that this Godzilla, is there a fact that these movies that they made about these creatures fighting against man and fighting against each other from outer space, um did it really exist? um where was the idea of creating this movie in Japan a long time ago? And yeah, it these movies were created way before you even thought of like black and white, right? And they
Mm.
used puppets and they had stuff like that, and they
Oh,
did
really?
create, they did build these wooden structures so that Godzilla can turn around and smash them and destroy
Right.
them. But does he still exist in the volcanoes? That's the thing
Mm.
about it. And we have no idea. We cannot say yes it did or no it didn't, but it's still a big question, right? And how did they come about? It was creating this big huge beast, um who didn't like what man was creating. Man was working with chemicals and destroying the earth. So Godzilla was created to protect the earth and to protect the land, and not to destroy the soil and not to make it so toxic.
Is
So
is is the Legend of Godzilla based on anything literal?
it was, I I don't know that answer. Like, it's a
Okay.
big question mark to me, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's does sound like, any number of different folklores in a manner of speaking. The
Yeah,
great leviathans and sea monsters and
yeah.
of yore. But I just wondered if specifically the
Yeah, they do think he did exist. What happened to him?
Mm-hmm. And
they
that
do
he went back to the volcano to live.
do they really think they're, I mean, like, who's they when you say this?
Well, we're talking about Japanese scientists, right?
Deputy
And
scientist?
yeah,
Japanese
they
science.
yeah. Um, there's a lot of them running around.
Wow. Well, I mean, hey, I'll tell you what, it's if there's 10, 12 foot primate hairy people running through the forest, if there are potentially Loch Ness monsters, and if there are cryptids, different of all different shapes and sizes, could there be some form of giant type of
Mhm,
cryptid?
mhm.
It wouldn't surprise me.
No,
Anything is possible. I don't pretend to know, but it is a pretty huge leap to get there, logically
yeah,
speaking. I mean,
yeah,
but again, I love this stuff, and I love the idea that
yeah, yeah.
anything is possible. So,
We have two possible, I guess, Loch Ness monsters here in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
okay. Wow.
Creatures very similar to it, where they just vary in size,
Hmm.
a little bit in size, but also a little bit in color. One
Mm-hmm.
is more green, the other one is more brown.
Mm-hmm.
There's
Wow.
one in South Japan, but I believe because they wanted it when I first looked at it when they were first discovered. It reminded them of the Loch Ness monster, and obviously the nickname for the Loch Ness monster is Nessie. So when they were naming this, they're like, we want to kind of pay tribute to Nessie and keep the SIE.
Mm,
So the one I think I could have it reversed. The one down here in the south, which I believe is supposed to be a few hours away from me, so I'll have to see that. But I believe that it's called Issy, and the
mhm.
Mm-hmm.
one up north is called Kusi.
Mm.
Okay. Huh. Well, and that's a theme that repeats all over the world too. Like
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's definitely.
there's a
Yeah.
global Bigfoot presence in the term of, I mean, there's lots of regional names for them, but they're essentially very similar, at least. So they're probably from the same family tree, but the same is true for like Loch Ness Monster, Nessie versus Ogopogo versus Champ versus the
Uh,
Ponderay Paddler versus Peppy. and so on and so forth around the
Mm,
globe. These the
mm,
consistency of
yeah.
these stories coming up. Well, there's a huge lake monster in there, and it's like I don't know. Wouldn't surprise me. We don't spend a lot of time underwater, so
No,
I
no,
believe that that makes sense to me.
yeah.
There's a lot of sea spirit or water spirit cryptids here in
Ah,
Japan. That is
Mhm.
one that we thought about touching on, but like we were saying earlier, it basically mostly be a this is where it is at.
sure,
This is what it's called.
sure.
Yeah.
Yes, the Devil's Triangle happens to be south of Tokyo.
Hmm.
We
Oh,
talked
Yeah.
about that a few times, where it is its own Bermuda Triangle here in Japan.
Yeah.
that's fascinating. Yeah,
Yeah.
doesn't surprise me. I
They
think
either
that
call it the Devil's, or sorry, the Dragon Sea or the Devil's Triangle.
Mm-mm.
Both kind
oh,
of
okay,
Mm.
same thing to them.
Yeah.
gotcha. Very
And
fast.
To
it's
answer this, though, I actually looked into this. Japan has not remade any. Japan has not remade any American horror stories. However, America has redone a lot of Japanese horror stories to
yeah.
what they want. So probably because the ones in America just really doesn't interest the ones here in Japan.
No. We're still they're still trying to deal with our own cryptids here in Japan. You know, like yeah,
Yeah, no, they did not remake any.
yeah. And it's funny, because every spring a fishing vessel would come up empty off the Pacific Ocean.
Ooh,
So the police, so they'd have to ask the Coast Guard to drag them to land so the police can study it. But there's no remains of nobody. There's no logs. There's no nothing. It's just the vessel's all intact. It's still floating, but it's empty.
that's so creepy. Yeah, those kind of stories. There's been
And
several, especially around the Sea of Japan and
yeah,
down in
yeah,
the
yeah,
several different areas down in there, even near Australia. I think they've had
yeah,
around. Was it around Sumatra? There was another derelict ship that was found, and just there was nobody there. It was
yeah.
the ship was
It's
fine.
just empty. It's just
Yeah,
empty, and it's just floating in the ocean.
yeah,
And so, finding out what happened there. Yeah, police is going to say, "Well, we're not going to tell you anything. Like,
yeah.
it's private information." Like, oh yeah, really? Yeah. Okay.
Happened in international waters. We can't touch it. Yeah, probably
Yeah.
something like
Well,
that.
it happened off of Japan waters, and that's still going on investigation. Well, it's not going to be closed anyway because we don't know what happened. Like, and there's ships from China, there are fishing vessels from China, from Korea, and from all over Asia, right? And they're just floating in the ocean. So it happens every spring. It's
Yeah,
really weird, and they don't know why. They just don't know why, and it's yeah, kind of
very.
creepy, right?
Yes, it is. But there's certainly no shortage, as I'm preaching to the choir here, but there's no shortage of claims of the unexplained all around. And that's why, again, getting back to where I started, it's like that's why I love this stuff, is because
Yeah,
these are all different folds of reality. This
Yeah,
concrete box that we've been taught has absolute rules, and
yeah,
yet all these things are bending the rules.
yeah,
And obviously we're dealing with things that we just can't possibly understand, at least yet.
yeah. And you know what? I think we don't know anything about our planet. We don't know
Mm,
anything what exists inside of it, the
true.
core of it, under the ocean,
Yeah.
in the air, in
I
the
totally believe in the
volcanoes.
core Earth or hollow Earth theory.
No,
Yeah.
there's a lot that goes on that we don't know, and that we're just not even touching the beginning of it. We have a lot of theories about it, but we're just touching the tip of it, and we haven't learned anything yet, and we're just still like textbook learning of
Sure.
everything, and
Sure we are. Yeah.
there's so much out there that we don't know. And it happens when it comes to spirits, it becomes with entities, it comes with everything else on top of it, shadow figures, everything, right?
Mhm.
We just don't know.
Right.
And we can't say we do know because we really don't.
No, we don't. there's no way we know, but I think honestly, again, it's the journey that's exciting to me. Like, I do investigating as well. Just did
Mm-hmm.
an investigation this last Saturday night
Mm.
at a haunted bar near here, and we had an epic night. Just some
Oh.
crazy stuff popping off with the equipment and corroborating evidence and stuff. It was like, wow, this
Mm.
is so intense and powerful. But again, there's so much we don't know,
Yeah.
and that's the journey, though. That's what's
Mm-hmm.
exciting because
Yeah.
again, there's these long held beliefs. Well, spirits very well could be made of electromagnetic energy, and I'm thinking, well, no, they probably couldn't be, because
Yeah.
if a spirit was just electromagnetic energy, then anywhere you got weird hauntings, you just hang a bunch of magnets up and you would screw up this electromagnetic energy and
Yeah.
probably disrupt it, or you could just ground it or something like that. But
Yeah.
what I think it is that whatever energy that spirits are, whatever they are,
Mm-hmm.
interacts with the electromagnetic field.
Mm-hmm.
In other
Yeah.
words, they're causing aberrations within the electromagnetic spectrum with their presence.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't mean to suggest that they're necessarily electromagnetic energy. And
Mm.
so I think that we've got to learn, and what this stuff maybe will stand to teach us if we drill into it and really get enough effort and research going on, and with
Mm.
truly scientific minded people, we
Yeah.
could maybe figure out what this energy is, and maybe it'll be a turning point for our civilization,
Yeah.
that we'll understand this other different modes of energetic presences and fields around us that maybe could
Mm-hmm.
be harnessed, maybe could be utilized, maybe we wouldn't need fossil fuels or any other number of things
Yeah.
as much. Maybe they would open new doorways or new discovery, and
Yeah.
I think it's kind of what Tesla was referring to when he said, look, when we start investing our energy into researching the non-physical, we'll learn
Yeah.
more in a decade than we have in all of recorded history. And it's like, wow,
Mm-hmm.
what a
Yeah.
bold claim. But
Yeah.
maybe that's kind of what he was alluding to, because by all measures, it does seem like he knew a hell of a lot more than he ever wrote down, or at least than we ever saw that he wrote down.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
And
I think
That's
they're
my
already doing that, but they're not gonna tell us just because
Yeah, exactly.
they make
and
more money
Yeah, yeah,
doing what they're doing now.
yeah.
sure.
It's like
Yeah,
the cure for cancer. We all know it exists, but
Yeah.
it'll never
Yep.
be public due to the fact is they
Big
make more
pharma
money
makes
off
a
of
lot
us
more
being
money
sick than
in keeping
healthy.
people
Yeah.
sick than
yep. Then curing,
making
yeah,
people
for
better.
sure.
You
Yep.
know.
That's the old consumable thing. You got to have a product that requires consumables. Like you buy a printer, well, you got to
Mm-hmm.
buy the ink. The ink is where the expense is. you
Yeah.
know and
Yeah.
God, now even
And
they
you got to buy paper too, right? Like.
right, there's consumables, there's things you have to keep consuming to use it
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
to acquire. So there's this long chain of purchases, and it seems like you're right, like medicine has moved the same direction. It's like, well,
Yeah.
we could maybe cure this, but God, just imagine how much it's worth if we just treat it.
Yeah. Just
So
keep on and just keep on making people sick. Just keeping people sick and making them healthy. There's a lot of stuff that we have here that
mhm.
they don't share with North America, right?
uh,
Um, and there's a lot of medicine here that works that they don't share with America. There's we have fuel efficient cars. There's a way of doing it, but they don't share it with North America. But since
sure.
they have certain plants, Toyota created a plant and Nissan and Honda has a plant now in America, and it's made by Americans, and so they're teaching how to create fuel efficient cars
Mhm.
now. And yeah, it does work. They have electric cars here, but they have both. You can use electric and you can use gasoline in the cars also, and they
Wow.
can be fuel efficient too, right? They create SUVs too that they can do it with that too. So yeah,
Mm, yeah,
and they don't require as much fuel
sure.
as the regular gas guzzler does, right? So
Mm,
yeah, it's just the technology is there. It's just
yeah.
that sharing it is the big problem, right?
Well, the technologies have been here too for that too, but
Yeah.
all the major oil companies have bought up all the patents. When somebody develops it, there was one gentleman who had come up with a way to tune his car to use a gallon of fuel to drive 100 miles, 100
Mm-hmm.
miles to the gallon. And Shell Oil Company bought up that patent and all the rights to it, and then just
Yeah.
buried it. It's like, well,
Because
yeah,
they want people to buy more fuel,
sure, yeah,
and
yeah,
it's the greed that goes along with it, right?
sure it is. Yep, yep. So there's
Yeah,
plenty of that, and that's the sad part of it. But
yeah,
hopefully we'll come to a day when people are more motivated for the good
yeah,
of all rather than just some bottom lines and some
yeah.
executives. I don't know. I
Like
don't,
in Japan, we have all the doctors here are a little bit different. They prescribe a lot of herbal medicine that goes along with a lot of Western medicine
oh,
that helps the body heal better, especially if you have a cold or if you have a sore throat or you have an earache.
sure.
You know, and the thing is that you just can't use pills. You have to use everything that's in your means.
Yeah.
And the more open you are to doing that, I think the better you are at helping people. And
Mhm.
well, it goes along with big pharma too, right? There we go again. Like goes around in circles, right? Yeah. So I
Yeah.
don't know. It's just life is a little bit different here. Um,
Yeah, it seems like it's pretty fascinating, and
um,
I love talking about these differences too because it's
Yeah.
interesting to me. I just don't know much about Japan.
yeah. Well, you will never know because nobody will tell you, and
Uh,
it's kind of like need not to tell, need not to know. If you don't want to ask, you'll never know. You'll never learn, right?
right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And nobody's willing to even tell you anything either,
Yeah.
unless you kind of like, tell me, right?
Tell me now. I want to know. Sure. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. No, that's
So
fantastic.
the interesting thing about Jeepers Creepers, as he was saying earlier, is Coldwater, Michigan is actually my hometown.
Oh, is
And
it
I
really?
do, yes, and I do know people. Is actually in a town next to it, in a town called Bronson, Michigan, is where the Jeepers Creepers movie, well, it was inspired. And I've actually talked to some people who still live in that area. Who one lives down the street, another one lives wherever she lives. She says I can look out one of my windows and see the building that inspired the movie. And I asked them, it's like, in case this movie is ever brought up on my podcast, and obviously it has been. I was like, what happened to that building
yeah.
now? I'm curious on what it is now, and they said it's actually owned by the Amish, where
Oh,
they
yeah.
Mm,
actually used it as a barn for a while, but now it is boarded up. There was at one point, I don't know if it still is, they cleaned it off. They said at one point though, I think this is also why they had to board it up from being a barn, is people started graffiti on it.
Oh,
mm,
So I think that's also now why they had to board it up, and they're just
sure.
like, because it is the Jeepers Creepers, and people to be have to go there and ruin things for everyone else.
Why
yeah.
not?
They they had to board it up, which is
You know,
unfortunate that you
that's
can't.
sad because we had a really good haunted hospital. It's not on my side. It's the other side. It's on the Pacific side, but a little bit left to us. It was really good. It was the most notorious haunted hospital that we had in this side of Tokyo. Um, and it was in Sagamihara, the area, the prefecture, and it was extremely haunted. And the thing is that every young person wanted to go there for a thrill.
Mm.
But then they find that things were being destroyed.
Oh,
Um,
no.
yeah, they spray painted it everywhere, and they destroyed the walls, destroyed everything. So the explorers who did like Japanese haunted areas tried to go back there, but the city had to tear it down because
Oh,
of the destruction. And you know what? It ruined it for everybody, right?
Sure. Yeah.
and it was one of the best haunted hospitals there. It was older, and it was really cool, and
Oh,
there was a lot of activity going on there in
mm,
that haunted hospital. We don't have a morgue because we just have a place where they kept the bodies till the family comes and claims it and takes it
mm,
to the funeral home. But yeah, they had a lot of really weird stuff happening and people who died. And it's just creepy. It was one of the most creepiest, interesting places to go to. But
mm,
yeah, when they tore it down, it was like it ruined it for everybody, right? And so,
sure. Yeah, that's
and,
sad.
and even I wanted to go there.
Mm, sure.
Yeah,
That
it's
sounds like
just
it'd be fascinating. That's
yeah,
really sad that that's how it
but
ended.
that's what happens here.
Yeah.
And you say, why are these stupid dumb idiots destroying a
But
really cool, fascinating place? Really, like how
that
can we?
happens everywhere though. Everywhere there's kids, you
Yeah,
know,
I've seen
everywhere there's kids.
pictures of Ireland's Hellfire Club. The old pictures, the building's absolutely beautiful. It still
Mm,
is. However, the new recent pictures make me want to cry
yeah,
because
oh,
it is so graffiti that it's just
oh,
yeah.
like you
They
guys are
spray
ruining
painted
everything, especially the
everything.
history of that place. I'm like,
Yeah,
why? It
yeah,
has some of the most interesting history that if you're into paranormal, the
yeah.
Hellfire Club, yeah.
yeah.
It makes you want to strangle somebody, right? Because of that, right?
Well, the
Like,
fact is, like going back to Jeepers Creepers building, that it was
yeah,
actually private property with
yeah,
animals in it, and people are still going in there
Just
yeah,
no
and
respect.
graffitiing or what. That's all she told me because that's all she could see.
Yeah.
mm,
They could have been going in there and doing worse.
yeah. It's I think find something better to do, right?
You'd think. You'd think.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
But
Well,
yeah,
there you go.
unfortunately, they don't. So a lot of these, unfortunately, that's also why they ruin a lot of these places that get boarded up. There was
Mm,
Mm,
also a place in North Carolina that people love to visit Paranormal Investigator, but people ruin that, so now it is completely fenced off. You can't really go in there anymore.
well, isn't it probably why they fence off haunted places in Japan because they don't want anybody messing around with it too. So
That is
anything,
this here in Japan, and that's also what I was trying to get to now. This where Japanese paranormal group is really underground in your cities. Yeah, to this, there. I'm not gonna say there's probably not paranormal groups. They cannot be public about it. We can't find them. They don't obviously. They're not like the American ones where they
no.
have
they
pages
can be
on
they can
Facebook,
be
YouTube,
free and talk about it.
where they might have a YouTube channel, but it's under like a different name.
Sure.
They're not in front of the camera, or their face is blurred, or there's even some where people have seen and they're wearing masks, just so
Yeah.
you don't know who they are. Like I said, I can't say that they probably don't exist. There's just not they can't be public. We have tried reaching out to some of them. They
Mm-hmm.
absolutely will not get back with us. Either
Mm-mm.
one of us. I reached out. Irene's reached out in Japanese.
Mm-hmm.
Mm,
Neither one of us is getting the response back.
They call themselves digital creators, or
well,
and that's all they are, and they will not ever come out and say and tell you anything because they won't. Um,
sure.
it's the fact that Facebook is seen by a lot of people, a lot of public, right? So they don't want the
Mhm.
bosses to know, employers to know what they're doing on their own spare time and their free will, and you can get canned for no reason just
Yeah,
by doing this work.
sure.
And it's really sad because it's really not. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a no no, and the only reason why I'm coming out and saying, "Yeah, I do paranormal. Yeah, I can talk about it because I don't have to worry about anything."
Sure. Right.
And
Yep.
a lot of these other people do, so you just don't
Go,
talk
no,
about it.
this it would not work here.
Nope.
Just because people did try to do paranormal things, there was some psychic who did paranormal things. She had to shut her business down because it was not getting anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Just because of the fact is, like Irene was trying to explain, you cannot be public. You cannot be a native here in Japan, live here in Japan, work in Japan, and be and let people know you're into the paranormal. You can't even
Mm.
tell people you saw a ghost
Mm.
without possibly. You're probably going to lose your job.
Yeah.
It's not like America where HR says, "Well, as long as you don't say on your live stream you work here or you wear your
Yeah.
company T-shirt, you have anywhere behind you your company work logo. We
Right.
can't do anything about it." That is the
Yeah.
Mhm.
exact opposite here. They're
Oh,
going to be like, "Oh, Irene, I heard that you're into ghosts, so we have to." Or you told Brent you saw a ghost, so we're going to have to let you go. That is the
Yeah.
reality here.
Yeah.
mm,
So that's what I'm saying is people are like, well, should aren't more people going to come forward? Probably not,
Yeah.
especially when your livelihood is on the line.
Yeah.
yeah, that's scary. That's scary.
And especially if you are a commercial pilot, it's a UFO, you'd be either benched doing paperwork or you'd be forced to retire.
Mm,
Either, or pick your choice, right? It still means a pink slip, right?
mm.
So yeah, it's really sad because you'll be shunned by the rest of the people. Like, how dare you say something, right? You should have kept your mouth shut, right? Yeah,
Man.
that's why, you know, very few people know what I do here. Um, I just I just keep quiet, okay?
Probably the best idea, especially if that's the way that the culture approaches that. And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, that doesn't
Uh,
sound like there's a lot of recourse for the person trying to defend their career if
oh
they say
yeah,
something like that. It's like, well,
and especially if you could see them, if you could talk to them, they'll say, "Oh, you need a trip to the loony bin, right?"
well, in
Yeah,
my case, they'd probably be right, but no,
yeah.
just
But then I'd say, "Hey, I am loony, and
yeah,
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 I
I own
mean
it.
that's me. I got labeled loony across my forehead, and you gonna argue about it, right?"
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
And hey, I don't care, But
Yeah.
yeah, and I had my friend belongs to a Catholic church, and so do I. And he said, "You can't be doing this." I said, "Why can't I? I mean,
Yeah.
it's on my own free will, but you can't be talking to spirits. And you can't be doing anything paranormal if
Mhm.
if you're gonna go to church." I said, "Who says so? Right? You?"
I thought that Shinto priests would go around and take care of hauntings and stuff like that. Isn't that
They
still the case?
do. That's why I go to Shinto shrine every summer or every spring or summer to get cleansed because my work gets really heavy and
Mm.
I do deal with a lot of dead people.
Well, they do,
Eh,
as you're saying, cleansings. I don't
yeah.
know. Do they
Yeah.
Eh,
ever come out? Do they ever go out to people's houses, or it's just one of those you just get
no,
cleansed?
no, 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 no. You have to go to them.
Oh. Hmm.
Yeah, that's because Irene was always saying that she lived in a apartment, a haunted condominium, but no one would come to help her. So yes, you can go get cleansed. However, that's not going to help you if your house is haunted.
Right.
No,
Yeah. The
I can
infestation.
I can put ambulance up all over my house, and that's still not gonna help me from getting sick and from my
Right.
kids getting sick too. That's not gonna, cause yeah, they will make you sick and they will kill you.
Wow.
Um, yeah, it's it's the dark side of that. Also in Japan. So yeah, you just have to be vigilant and try to keep a sane head on your shoulder and try not to. Okay, I'm not going to interact with you. I'm not going to listen to you. I'm just going to go over here and do this. But yeah, I did get I was I get did haunted every 6 years. It would come and attack me, and
Ouch.
yeah, and get possessed twice. And so yeah, I had a ring of things happening to me. And you're still standing? Yeah, I'm still alive. Oh
Well, that's good. You're a fighter then. That's good. Wow.
yeah, I'm not gonna let it destroy me or unalive me.
Good
There's
for
no
you.
way. No
Good for
way, no way, no way, no way. No, 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 no. And it did that and tried that to my kids. It tried that, it just attacked the whole family and
wow.
attacked the neighbors and everyone else. Like, my husband, time to move. I said, after 20 years, you're finally saying time to move. Damn.
That's funny.
And
Yeah, they
so
don't
that's,
know. They don't
yeah.
know what to do here if there is a haunting. So
Nope.
that's why they.
You pack up and you leave.
Yeah,
And you
you. That's
leave.
also if a place is known to be haunted, they board it up to the public because they're worried of if they anger this spirit,
Hmm.
they don't know what to do. There's no one to call. So
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
that's what I was telling you earlier before we went live. I'm like, yeah, you can't
Right.
book private locations. You can
No.
go to parks, but that's basically it.
Ah,
You can't because
okay.
they're
No.
like I said, they're afraid of making it mad. There's no one to come here to make it mad. And I
Hmm.
tell people it's kind of refreshing to live somewhere where we don't have demonologists. I mean, I know America has some real ones, but obviously
Hmm.
there's a lot of people who wake up one day and you're like, you know
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
I'm no,
Yeah. God, which is horrible because I don't think people understand the gravity of that statement, what that
yeah,
means.
and that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. Is like people, and I always make fun of that, especially the people who they're like, I'm gonna be a demonologist, so they take like an online course
Sure.
Yeah.
and they
Yeah.
get
You
the
take one
certificate at
course.
the end.
Okay.
And they're like, well, I have a certificate to prove it. And I'm like, from someone, I was like, I've made fun of these courses that I decided to actually take one of those online demonology courses to get a certificate. I could say the same thing, but I don't, just because the stuff they taught in there is basically already stuff I knew from being a paranormal investigator,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
it doesn't even scratch the surface of
Right.
what you need to know knowledge wise or even
Right.
training wise
Hmm.
Hmm.
to be an actual demonologist.
Yeah.
And there's so much work involved.
Yeah,
And
that's why I say I can make fun of it because I've actually took the course. I already know what it's like. It doesn't even begin to start entering what you need
No,
to know. Not
yeah,
even a little
yeah.
bit.
Yeah.
that's amazing. Wow. Hmm.
Um, it's just a little bit different. And a lot of places you don't want to go to. So you pick and choose which one you want to visit and which one you want to investigate because there's a lot of places here that you shouldn't. Or if you want to come out tomorrow, you just don't go there, right?
Okay.
Because I remember watching on TV where this young man who went to this haunted place. He got so sick he went into the hospital and he came out in a body bag.
Oh no.
Yeah, he died.
Thanks. That's creepy.
Yeah,
Poor guy.
and yeah, it happens here a lot, so you have to be careful.
Sure.
Um, the schools are haunted too.
I think
Yeah, I've
most
seen a
places
lot.
are
I've
haunted
seen a
here
lot of
somewhere.
videos come out of Japan, and I don't know how legit many of them are, but some of them look like they might be something.
My
So
son's school's haunted too, you know.
I wouldn't surprise me. I think schools are generally
Yeah.
pretty big hotspots. Schools, hospitals, prisons,
Oh yeah.
asylums, all
Yeah.
of those places where people are congregating. They just like we were
Well, it's
talking about
also the
before.
emotion of the younger generation that's
Yeah.
easy to
It's
feed off
it's
of.
Yep. Yeah,
it's
exactly. So, yeah, and the emotional imprints and that
yeah.
may coalesce into some form of egregore or something. So, yeah, I mean, doesn't surprise me at
It's
all. Absolutely.
and it's just crazy. That's why my kids don't like going to school, I guess, because they could see a lot of stuff, right? And they said,
Mm, okay.
mm-mm, 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 mm-mm.
Fair enough. Fair
Yeah.
enough.
So yeah, it took a lot of if you go to school, like I promise you, I'll take you someplace afterwards. They said, You promised? I go, yeah. And so eventually I had to go fulfill the promise. They said, yeah, I didn't like what I saw today at school. I said, well, just ignore it, okay? If it knows that you can, if you acknowledge that it exists, it's gonna come after you more. So just
Mhm.
don't acknowledge that it exists and you can see it. And they go, yeah, but I can't help it.
Mhm.
Yeah,
That's
it's
amazing. Yeah, got to be careful. Kids are really sensitive, though,
yeah,
generally speaking. But if they're also gifted on
yeah,
top of that profound
yeah,
sensitivity, then that's really powerful. But
yeah. My kids are all gifted, and they two of them will talk about. The other one is like, no.
oh, that's cute.
Yeah, but yeah, it's really hard in Japan because there's not okay. Tokyo's 90% haunted. Okay, the other 10%, well, I don't know, but the land and everything else and what happened in the history,
Mhm.
it has residual energy all over the place, and you could just stand there and by seeing just knowledge it's there,
Sure.
and just going outside. You want to see something haunted? You don't need tickets. There, I'll take you to it right here. Okay, right
Mm,
across the street, right? Yeah.
sure.
It's just little hot spots all over the place. Where Amanda is, two little hot spots all over the place where she lives. It's like everywhere. You don't need to buy tickets. I'll just take you there. Here you go. Come with me.
Mhm.
So yeah, even if it's a little place, it's still haunted, right?
Right, right. For sure. Yeah, it doesn't have to be a size. The size doesn't matter at all. It just
No.
matters what energy is imprinted there, or
Yeah.
whatever it is,
And
whatever
it's
entity was involved.
crazy, it's just
Yep.
crazy because you know people leave flowers at a place where somebody has died
Sure.
by being hit by a car or
Mhm.
in a car accident, and it's residual energy that keeps on happening over and over and over again, and it's yeah, you could see what happened there and then show it to you, and
Sure.
it's like a video playing in your head that you can feel the oh
Yeah.
yeah, it's just horrible. Right.
Well, it's been cool getting together and talking with you guys. I really
Yeah,
appreciate it because you guys have taught me a lot more about what Japan is like. Even the views of the paranormal, I find
yeah,
really really interesting. So thank you so much for having me on today.
Even
yeah.
like their culture here has to do with a lot respecting the spirit. So we always find it funny how to them they always want to respect the spirit,
Mhm.
but they don't want anything to do with actual ghosts.
No.
Yeah, it's weird, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is kind of a conundrum, but perhaps it's
trust me. I
spiritual.
tried when I first got here. That's one of the first things I did was I was like, I am going to look for all the paranormal team, go
Yeah.
to the paranormal investigation spots, and then I was looking there. I'm like, why can I not find any paranormal here? Well, going
Ooh.
back to what I was saying earlier, is they don't,
Yeah.
and they probably do it in secret.
Maybe.
So one of those things where I'll never find it online. They will never. They don't have. They don't have a website. They don't have a Facebook to go
Sure.
on, reach out. If they
Yeah.
do, like I said, it's under a disguise, and they don't
It's
reply
it's under digital creator.
or whatever. Yeah, whatever fake username they go by.
Sure. Yeah.
So that's why we reached out to each other. That's why she reached out to me, and I was the only one available that would talk about it openly.
Oh, cool.
Just like
That's really cool.
basically, it was like, congratulations, you did find a paranormal community in Japan.
Me.
You are it. You are it. That's cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
Or at
Well,
least online publicly admitting it.
sure. Yeah, exactly.
I say this because I was looking at stuff I was looking at stuff online for our podcast, and I did see that we're starting to get listeners in Japan.
Oh,
Hmm.
So that's
nice.
cool.
Yeah, I think
So
awareness is the big thing, right? As people.
all you guys listening, thank you. If you guys are
Yeah.
afraid to reach out, you guys can always email at spookyjapanpodcast@gmail.com
Yeah.
if you want us to maybe mention anywhere that any haunted locations or ghost stories here in Japan that you have, or any haunted
Yeah,
locations you feel like our listeners should know about or find interesting, or even
yeah,
cryptids.
yeah,
We'll keep you anonymous. We promise.
yeah,
I'm putting this
yeah.
out there. If you do email, don't
No,
worry. I'm not gonna give your identity away.
no,
We
Mhm.
don't do that. You want to
no.
stay anonymous? We understand. This is why I
Yeah,
started the podcast, for it to be a safe place for you guys.
yeah.
Very
We
cool.
always respect everybody, so you
Yeah,
don't
and
have
we
to worry
like
about it.
just we know if we get an email from someone,
Yeah,
it's going to be a big step for you guys. So
yeah. And don't think you have to give up your identity because you know something or you know of a place, because yeah, we understand it too, because I I don't necessarily come out and say what I do to anybody either, and I try to keep myself sane. it
No
it
way
it
all.
yeah, it's like that, you know. And we respect all the guests, and we respect everybody, and we just want, if you have something that you want to tell us, don't forget, we're always here, and we don't sleep at night either. So
people will be like, "Why is it 3 a.m. and you're messaging me?" I'm like, "I just remembered, and it's also daytime for you."
yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, do you not sleep? No,
No, no.
No.
I don't know what sleep is. I read it to know what sleep is. Doesn't it?
Wow, it's almost been 2 hours already. Whoa,
Yeah,
that flew.
yeah, that's time flies when you're having fun, right?
Yeah, that's what we say. As long as you get the good information, get good conversation going, you can't help it.
Yeah,
Oh, well, thank you guys for having me on. I'm just really enjoyed this, and I really appreciate the education. That's really interesting because I kind of just figured everybody was kind of looking at this stuff the same way, but clearly they're not.
I wish.
no, there's a lot out there. There's a
Sure.
lot of things that there's a lot of places that we want to go together. It's just like coming together, because we live on the opposite sides of the country. Just getting together is a big deal, right? So yeah, and we
Right.
both have families and we both have children, so you know,
Yeah.
find the time, find space to do it is another thing, right? But yeah,
Right.
we
No, that's cool.
just, but yeah, there's a lot of places we want to go to together, and
That's
if
really
you ever in coming around this way again, look us up. We'll be happy to show you around the haunted
Amen.
parts,
I would love that. Yeah, if I
the
ever get over
haunted
to
parts.
yes,
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, any of it really, but yeah, the haunted parts I'd love to check out, at least to see. Yeah. So I will take you up on that if I'm ever get over there. But yeah, I mean, it's been a lot of fun. This has been
Yeah.
great, and it's great to have met both of you. Thank you so
And
much.
thank
thank you
you.
for
Thank
coming
you
on.
for joining us. We had a
Yeah.
blast. We'll have to schedule something for a part two with you.
Yeah, we'll do
Oh,
part two.
perfect. Perfect. Yeah, just let me know and we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And if any of you out there listening want to know more about the Paranormal Portal, probably the best one place stop is paranormalportal.net. And
Mm-hmm.
that has all my social media and information about the different shows that I do.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I'd love to, if any of you want to check it out, I would be honored.
Yeah.
But thank you both again. I
Yeah.
Thank
really
you.
had a great
Thank you for
time.
coming on the show.
Thank you for
We
taking
really
time
enjoyed
to join.
ourselves. Yeah.
Oh, thank you guys.
Thank you. Everyone else, thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.
Bye.